Aman, we're at 11:29. 2 more minutes and should we begin then?
Yes, let's give it a few minutes for people to start trickling in.
Absolutely. And for those of you that have joined us ahead of time, thank you so much for making it. We're very excited to be presenting to you again. It's been a while since we've done one of these sessions. So we hope that we can make the most of it.
Great. I think, Khyaati, we have the right quorum to start off now.
Absolutely.
I'm sure people will continue to trickle in as and when they get a chance. Great. A very warm welcome to everyone. Welcome back to another webinar, Edge webinar from KNOLSKAPE. Like Khyaati said, it's been a while since we did this. And this one is personally I'm really excited about as a sales leader. Today's topic is around 4 ways to build sales readiness in 90 days. We'll try and give you all the tips and tricks that we have. There's no magic bullet, unfortunately, but we can use some of the learnings from this webinar to make sure that we are able to go back and build our sales readiness in our teams more effective, right? And like the tagline says, unfortunately, AI is not the problem. Readiness is. I know we all love to now put all our blames on AI, but we are here to also debunk those myths. Great. Before we start, quick house check. You know, if you can hear my voice clearly, do give me a thumbs up in the chat. If you're also able to see the screen, a thumbs up for that as well. And lastly, most importantly, if you're ready to learn and have fun, give me another thumbs up for that. Great. So, Khyaati, over the next 60 minutes, this is the agenda we have for our audience today. We'll give a very brief introduction about KNOLSKAPE. I know some of you might already be familiar, but for those joining in new, we'll give you a very quick 5-minute overview of what KNOLSKAPE does. We'll then explain what the challenge that is facing revenue teams today and what are the 4 steps to enable these revenue teams. And from revenue teams, how do we then enable organizations and then some actionable next steps, right? So let's make the next around 45-50 minutes really packed with learnings. One request I always have is, while you're here to listen to us, but there's a lot of collective wisdom in the room as well. So at any point you want to add in your thoughts, feel free to do that in the chat. We'll also take questions towards the end, and we'd love to hear from each one of you, right? So before we start, here's the team, KNOLSKAPE team here today. My name is Aman. I'm the Chief Business Officer at KNOLSKAPE for the Asia Pacific region. I'm based out of Singapore, and today I'm also joined by my colleague Khyaati. Khyaati, a quick intro from your side.
Absolutely. Thank you, Aman, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone on the call. My name is Khyaati, and I look at strategic partnerships and work very closely with the APAC team on solutioning.
Awesome. Great. So quickly starting with a brief introduction about KNOLSKAPE. We are the world's largest experiential learning technology company, directly present across 6 countries across the world. But in a lot of other countries where we don't have an active presence, we also work with a large partner network. But we're directly present in the US, UK, India, Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia. As an experiential learning technology company, we have over 100 plus solutions on our platform. The way we are slightly different from other pure online learning companies is we have a hybrid model. So we run obviously a lot of simulations and role plays. And some of these solutions are also brought to life through our network of facilitators and coaches who are present across the world who bring these experiences to life, right? Now, over the course of the last 25 odd years, we've had the chance to work with over 400 plus leading organizations across 75 countries. Every year, we engage over 500,000 learners through the solutions on our platform. You'll see a list of some of the names that we work with. Of course, a lot of big names. The important thing here is that you'll see a good mix of technology, banking, financial services, but also retail, consumer, and pharma, which means our solutions are industry agnostic. They can be adopted to any and every industry. And of course, over the last few years, KNOLSKAPE has also been recognized by a lot of leading institutions. And these are just a snapshot of some of the awards that we've done. Now, when we work with these organizations, these 400 plus organizations across 75 countries, a lot of work that we do is across making them future ready and performance ready, right? And in this context, what does it really mean to be a future ready and a performance ready organization? So how we look at it at KNOLSKAPE is across two broad spectrums. One is on the learning side, and the other is on the performance side. And across learning, we have three core pillars, which is essentially part of the core skills, which is leadership readiness, digital and AI readiness, and culture readiness, right? Now, these are core skills that every organization is struggling with and will continue to face a challenge with. Things like AI adoption, digital mindset, innovation, customer centricity. So we have solutions that tackle this form of the core skills challenge. And then there is what we call the performance or contextual skills bucket, which is very, very organization, industry, role, or domain specific, right? So things like employee onboarding, organization culture and values, process training, product training. Now, these are very, very specific to every organization. Every organization will have a different way of tackling these challenges. And this is where we bring in our customization experience to help build some of these contextual skills. Now, in the context of these skills, a lot of the work that we do with organizations is across sales readiness, right? And these days, the biggest challenge is how do I get my revenue teams, which is sales and marketing teams, to adapt faster, to deliver results faster. And that is essentially what we'll be tackling in today's webinar, right? So with that context, I'll hand over to Khyaati to get us started.
Thank you, Aman. Thank you for setting the context. Now I want to jump right in, right? Sales obviously is something that's been an evergreen topic of discussion for us with our clients, with the partners that we work with. But I think something that's happening, Aman, that I'm seeing on the ground is that we're talking about how AI is fundamentally changing businesses, but no one's necessarily talking about how sales itself as a function is changing because of AI, right? Internally and externally, the impact of the technology. And I just want to set the context by looking at a couple of numbers. So the problem itself or the challenge itself is quite concrete in our head, right? One is that we've seen with early pilots across different organizations that whoever's actually enabling their teams with AI, and I talk about tools and training, they're actually seeing a 30% increase in closure rates. So there is some merit to using AI effectively within the sales function, right? Or any growth teams, actually. Second, what happens, I think, a lot of times is, and Aman, being a sales leader, you'll also give us your insight, your lived experience across the past decade. I think sales leaders want to spend a lot of time prospecting, but they end up doing a lot of admin work or a lot of work that's not sales specific. The minute we bring in AI and automations, the amount of time that leaders or salespeople spend prospecting goes up by 50%, which means you're obviously contributing more to the pipeline, you're spending more time with clients, creating more touch points, right? So that the 30% that you're seeing in closure rates is a direct outcome of prospecting time going up. But the challenge that we're seeing is that organizations across the board are actually very actively deploying solutions, AI solutions within their CRMs or for data and analytics with ABM, but they're not really training their teams on how to use it. So you have the tool, you have the investment, but you've not necessarily spent time on teaching your team what this means for them, how work changes, and also educating them on how the customer or the audience might be changing as an outcome of AI. So before I move through the webinar, I do want to understand from the audience, how many of you in your organizations have started deploying AI in your growth functions, that's sales and marketing? If you can give us a sense in the chat, that'll be helpful. It'll also help us understand what that discussion needs to look like for the next 50 minutes. Now, Aman, I want to start the 90-day plan by actually setting context with a story, right? So I thought let's come up with a character, and this is a character that I relate to through the conversations that I have with my clients. And I wanted to know if you're meeting someone like Yuna, right? She's the head of sales readiness. She leads an 800-person, she trains an 800-person sales team. So this is a very large commercial org that runs in Southeast Asia, right? And on paper, the organization's AI enabled. In fact, if you look at the work she's done in the last year, there are forecasting tools, AI assisted outreach, content platforms, enablement dashboards. All of this has been deployed. So she should technically be looking for a promotion, but she's really stressed because none of this is working. Aman, my question to you is, when you sit across from leaders, training L&D leaders and performance management leaders, how many times are you meeting people like Yuna, and what exactly are their challenges?
Yeah, I would say, Khyaati, like if I've seen so many Yunas over the last few years and months that I wish I had $1 for every time this got mentioned. I would happily retire by now, right? And this is, I think, the biggest problem that all or almost every revenue leader is facing, and every head of enablement, right? I think so. Fundamentally, I would break it down across 3 to 4 different challenges that I see. I think the first thing that happens is a lot of UNAs sort of, optimize for deployment
Yeah,
as opposed to adoption, right? So on paper, you have all the check marks saying that, 3 AI projects deployed, but none of them adopted, right? And these are two very different things. Just because a tool is live does not mean the way, a team has changed the way how they work, right? And the biggest gap between that is practice, right? And nobody is really focusing on how do you build that practice to use that particular tool or process, right? Uh, the other big thing that happens is that a lot of these decisions, especially in these large organizations where you have these large commercial sales teams, is these AI investments are, procurement decisions rather
yeah,
than capability decisions, right?
yeah.
So the budget has been approved by the board. It is the CIO who's brought the tool, but nobody covered what reps need to do and what managers need to do differently, right? So that's a readiness gap in itself there, right? The other thing, people look at it as just one check mark or one activity, right? Where opposed to seeing it as a system, right? You cannot do one workshop, you cannot do one rollout, one launch, right? It has to happen over a period of time because
Mhm.
that's when capability really sticks, right? Not from, just doing something once, but doing it repeatedly, short bursts over time, right? I think that's where biggest capability gets built. Uh, so in summary, how I see it is it's people treat it as a tool problem where in reality it's a behavioral problem. So just buying the tool will not change anything, right? And I think most UNAs typically just focus on that first element.
I couldn't agree more. I think increasingly, even with AI, we see everyone just asking for the tool as opposed to what behaviors do I need to make it stick or make ROI come. But here's the thing that's interesting, right? Yuna is sitting now in a review 6 weeks later with her CRO, and he's saying, "Hey, you've taken so much money out of my PNL and done this whole exercise. We've trained people, they've lost maybe 12, 13 hours of their time on these tools, and I'm not seeing any output." And look at the kind of deals that are slipping, right? Ideally, these should not be slipping because I have AI now. So now, Aman, you work as a CBO as well. So I'm assuming you relate to this. In your experience, what is the difference between a team that has an AI tool but a team that's actually sales ready? What, in your experience, distinguishes the two?
Yeah. So I would say again, 3, 4 different markers that I like to look at from a CRO or a CBO lens, right?
Yeah.
One is AI will just help you with the insights. You will still need to put your managerial brain behind it, right? And I think the best across teams, when I talk to some of my peers as well, uh, the most readiness or managers who are most ready are ones who lead with questions as opposed to answers, right? Because during pipeline review, the last thing I want to do is tell my team that, hey, this is the deal that's stuck for you. This is what you should do, right? I could do that once, twice, but that doesn't really build judgment over time, right? So I don't want to hand out instructions. And I think with AI solutions, you now have access to a lot more insights for managers to ask and lead with these questions and build that judgment in the room. The other is I touched upon practice, right? So reps need to continuously practice, and the the topmost reps who do this consistently are ones who practice and are able to adapt mid conversations, right? So when a new objection comes their way for which they haven't gone through a training, they're able to easily adapt and make their way out of that situation. Uh, the other big indicator personally that I look at as a CRO is when the spread between my top performer and the bottom half is narrowing, right? And I think a lot of managers mistake this where, typically one or two reps are carrying the entire team, but it can work for 1 quarter, 2 quarters. But what happens if that person leaves, right? So when my bottom half starts closing the gap between to the top ones, that's a good signal for sales readiness in my team, right? And the last thing I want to mention is also forecast accuracy. Typically, the worst thing that would earlier happen is that I would be giving a forecast, and in the last month of the quarter, that would slip by 40-50%. Now, when my team's forecast hits within the 10% range, that's a good signal to say your sales team or your revenue team is now ready as well.
It's a tough one, huh? Because a lot of salespeople, I think, struggle with it. They'll commit certain numbers and then end of the month looks a little different.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I think everything you've said is spot on. And this is my challenge, Aman, because we have conversations around sales readiness day in and day out with different organizations around the world. I'm part of conversations in India and in Europe and North America as well. And what I'm seeing is that most organizations are trying to solve the readiness problem with more tools and more product training, right? Especially with companies that are now pivoting from maybe hardware to software or to a full stack solution. They're still pushing for product training, thinking that will solve the sales readiness problem. That solves the product readiness problem, though. And what I think I want to also share with the audience is that sales processes are dynamic and they change across regions. In fact, in something like in an area like APAC, they probably change every few hundred kilometers, right? And frontline teams are also very resistant to change. I mean, I think the fear is that my revenue will not come through, or whatever I'm already getting will not come through if I change what's working. So anything new is kind of slow to, for them to adapt. And data is available, but how many teams really know how to use data? And this goes back to your forecast problem. Am I able to forecast effectively? So I think I also want to ask people in the audience, what is your sales problem right now? Do you have a product training problem? Do you have a process problem? Do you have a data problem? Try and help us understand what's not working in your sales teams right now, because across the board, this is what we're seeing. And before we move into the 4 points or the 90-day plan that we've come up with and we've implemented actually in a few organizations, I also want to zoom into the pipeline and the process itself, right? The readiness gap could happen across the board, or it could be very specific to a certain part of the sales process. Like you could have a discovery problem, you could have a proposal or a solutioning problem, you could have a closure or a negotiation problem. So it could be anywhere across the board. It could also be a marketing problem, honestly, leads not coming in or no effective leads coming in. So tell us what you think works, what doesn't work, and where your biggest challenge is right now. There's a poll there. Someone, we also have Jason in the chat who's told us predictability of revenue and pipeline validation is a problem. So it's similar to a forecast, I'm assuming.
Yeah, very close.
Madhu is leads not coming in as planned. What are your thoughts on that, Aman? Where do you think that problem stems from?
Again, I think leads not coming in is, again, I would say people think of it as a marketing problem. I would say, again, it's both a sales and marketing problem, just like conversions are, right? And I think the best teams that use AI solutions to build that plan together are the ones who are most successful.
Geeta's telling us it's a consulting problem. And Aman, this was one of the things we were talking about on Monday as well. How do teams that are pivoting from hardware to software now build a consultative selling mindset? Um, Completely empathize with that. Let's close the poll in 10 seconds. Arch, if we can have the results up.
Yeah, I think consistent execution across the team has the highest votes. followed by engaging with relevance, not just volume, then prioritizing the right deals, and then activating content.
So what are your thoughts, Aman, on 2 and 4 being the biggest burning issues for most people on the chat?
Yeah, I think we're going to cover them in detail as we go along.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think what technically we are seeing is relevance is even more important now, right? And especially in this age where everybody has access to AI tools, I think the biggest red flag for me is seeing an AI generated email come in. The minute it comes in, it hits I hit the delete button, and that's happening across buyers in
Yeah.
South Asia, right? So volume, just because now you have access to all of these tools, you can generate 50 messages a day doesn't mean, you will succeed. So I think that one is definitely AI slop that we're all dealing with.
And the M dash and the it's not X, it's Y.
Yeah,
That's a giveaway. And Neeraj also commented saying it's a combination of all of this, right? And
yeah,
sometimes the whole process itself needs to be rethought of or optimized. So I think then my advice is pick one part of the problem that's contributing most to leakages and kind of fixing that. But let's move into the solution itself, right? And I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide. But when we work with different business teams around the world, there are 4 things that we largely look at. And in the age of AI, I think it's becoming a little bit more important to look at these separately and see how we're redoing this process, right? Ready to prioritize is the first one. How do I judge where my time goes, where my effort goes? So 20% leading to 80% outcome. How do we train teams to do that? Then ready to engage. How do we kind of do away with that mentality of spray and pray that is not working because of AI and because of all these filters and buyers becoming a certain way? Ready to create demand is how do I create better content? How do I enable my marketing team? How does marketing and sales work together? And ready to win is consistency over talent, which you've spoken about. And a lot of people in the chat also felt was important. So let's move to the first one. And Aman, we're going to look to you for your insights as a leader in the sales space and also as someone who has conversations day in and day out. The first one is judgment over activities, right? So,
yeah,
your sales team at this point has the forecasting data. But we saw in the slide where Ajay, her CRO, said, hey, I have the forecasting data, but no one's really doing anything with it. So, what do you think is the challenge with teams that build, dashboards, have Power BI, Tableau, maybe things like Clary and Gong as well, but are still
yeah,
losing revenue day in and day out? Um,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I touched upon this a little bit earlier, Khyaati, and I think the onus here definitely lies a lot on the manager, right? And I think the best pipeline reviews that managers do have one thing in common, right? Where managers use their data to open a conversation and not close it, right? Uh, So, typically a bad version would be like, as a manager or as a sales leader, I would look at the data and say, hey, this is the reason why this deal is not moving. This is what you should do. And that's the end of it, right? But that's not what you do. The better version to do this, now that I have access to all of this data, is ask my rep, right? What does this tell you? What does this mean for you? What is happening? Why is it happening? And then based on his reasoning that he gives or she gives, I then coach that person, right? So I'm coaching the reasoning, not the action, right? uh, and that is important because as a manager you cannot be in a call with your sales rep every single day. So at a Friday 4 p.m., if a rep is having a call and you're not able to join that and the deal needs a decision, that's where this reasoning judgment helps build, right? So I think that's what good managers do differently. The other very understated fact is that good managers also deprioritize publicly, right? Instead of saying that remove this good deals to the list, they also say that, these are deals that they should remove and why should you do this, right? And that teaches the team saying that, saying no is also a real skill. It's not a soft one, right? So I think that is another aspect that is very, very understated and which definitely needs more importance here.
Absolutely. And I mean, what if you're on leave or you're indisposed? Then what happens to the team, right? want to remove that dependence. And I think also, Aman, what I'm seeing is with AI coming in, it's also become really important. It's become easier for us actually to kind of build that judgment and discipline through learning exercises, right? As opposed to online, offline role plays with your manager or with your L&D, you can actually now deploy those solutions online, get people to practice certain situations, or even just recreate something that maybe didn't work for one person in your team, so others also know about it, as
Yeah.
opposed to sharing circles. Um, but let's move on to the next one very quickly. Context over volume, right? Here, how do I engage with my lead or my prospect effectively? What kind of personalization is required? Do I share the same content, the same email, the same proposal brochure with everyone? When to say, what to say? How do you think teams necessarily need to be trained on the pitch itself or on engagement with different buyer personas or ICPs, because businesses are dynamic now?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing here is, practice before deployment, right? Whether it's a marketing person, whether it's a salesperson, before you send any, let's say, a marketing sequence or you're pitching, you need to practice everything, right? The angle, the hook, the ask, the feedback. So by the time you're actually doing the real thing, you're not guessing anymore, right? So that's what I would say good engagement looks like. Uh, the other is, like you said, there are a lot of these hardware companies who are now pivoting to becoming full stack companies, right? I was recently talking to one of the largest uh, electrical manufacturing companies here, where all of their sales guys have typically been just product sales, right? And now they want, because they are getting, even with electrical equipment, AI is getting embedded. They're now having to pivot to solution selling, and they can't do that because their DNA is not there. Plus, it's a really large sales team, right? Um, so live deals are very expensive to, a place to learn, I would say. So you need to continuously practice this, right? And you can do this through role plays, through simulations, through all of that, right? Also, the volume game, I would say, is definitely over, right? Like I was saying, right? In Singapore, you email a bank, they will, firstly, they will not get that email, forget about deleting it. But the approach also doesn't work in other markets, right? Indonesia is more high touch, right? In India, SaaS buyers definitely know what AI copy looks like, right? So there's a lot of teams that are cutting through the noise. And again, I would say forget about volume, think more about consistency and relevance here.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think it's really important to learn what to say, when to say, and that again happens through practice. Live deals have, I mean, this is not the time, I think, just in the global business context as well, to be practicing on them. But let's move into shift three very quickly, and this is marketing specific. So those of you that are training your content teams, your ABM teams, your marketing teams specifically, this is for you. And Aman, I do have a couple of thoughts here because marketing teams traditionally have been, content marketing, you have ABM, you have outreach, then you've got brand and comms, and all of them used to physically create a lot of content regularly. And now what I'm seeing is, because we have access to LLMs, a lot of us, I mean, most of us have free Copilot or free Gemini as a part of our work subscription. We're now producing a lot more content. So manual content creation time has obviously gone down. Productivity in that sense has gone up. But what's also happening with a lot of organizations is that the content that's coming out is not as effective anymore. And that, to your point about emails, right, where you delete it immediately as soon as you know it's an AI generated email or AI has written it. So even though content fluency, the productivity has gone up, production and creation time, iteration maybe is a little bit easier. What would be your advice to marketing teams on using AI effectively? And second, how do you train your sales team on what content to use where? Because there are 200, 300 collaterals that are available to us. So how do you build judgment around what goes out when?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think you sort of hit the nail on the head there, Khyaati.
Mm.
Uh, I think what a lot of people, and I'm not saying this, saying that you don't need to invest in AI tools. Definitely, I think you need to. It cuts a lot of time. It's a wonderful thing to have. But I think what a lot of people have stopped doing is learning about the judgment part first, right?
Yeah.
So you can get all the AI tools that you would want in the world, but if you don't teach judgment alongside, which are these innate human skills on critical thinking, on database decision making, it has to work both of them in parallel, right? If you look at, and I'm doing a shameless plug here, but our AI Academy, which teaches some of this, it actually does focus a lot on judgment before tools, right? So I think that's something that everybody needs to do. But specifically for marketing, I think the best marketers are doing using AI to kill that blank page, right? Where the prompt is super tight, it's intent baked in, and then you use your own judgment to refine the copy, right? So most of the time is spent on the edit, what angle to take, what tone, what buyer, what specific point for a particular account, right? So again, I would say for marketers, it's a boon, but what you need to do is you need to use AI to replace the blank page, not the thinking, right? And the same goes for sales as well.
Absolutely, Aman. And I think that's something that we've also kind of learned on the job where the first cut or the idea or the bare bones of the content or the output has to come from the human. And then AI kind of works with you on obviously refining it, making it better. But it can't be AI's work through and
Yeah.
through. It has to be yours augmented by AI. And before I move to the next one, I think Sahil also has a question about what's happening in North America with sales readiness specifically, because we've been talking a little bit more about APAC. And Aman, I'll give you my 2 cents because I've been working with that market as well. I think just in general, with North America, there's obviously a lot of fear and a lot of concerns because of the geopolitical situation that we're in. So budgets are tightening. The kind of people that are being hired, the kind of resources that are being put into sales teams is also being questioned. But in general, I do feel like the North American market is a lot more amenable and open to using AI. Than we see in some other parts of the world, very similar to parts of APAC, where there is this curiosity, this need to experiment and see, hey, what can I do with the resources that I've got? But the trend of sales readiness or sales teams really transitioning or transforming in the context of AI, I think is a global trend. And I don't think that there's any market that's immune to that right now. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I know I've stressed a lot on APAC because, this is the market I breathe in, day out. But, now it's no longer a specific market. It's a global phenomena, right? I think the best teams also learn off one each other. So what one region is doing, North America picks up and vice versa.
Hmm.
And that's the way to go.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, we know this, we work across 6 markets. But let's move to the last one very quickly. And this one, I think, at least for me personally, Aman, is the most important because sales, a lot of, I think we glorify it as people who talk well and who are able to hold a conversation, but it's so much more and so much more goes into that process in the back end. So for me, and I've seen this across all organizations that I've worked with, right? And you also spoke about the top performers in the team. When you go and ask them, hey, what did you do differently? Or what's working for you? What's not working for you? And I think Yuna did this as well. She went to Miro and she said, hey, you're closing 2x the team average and you're using the tools effectively. What are you doing differently? And he said, I just use my instinct. I just read the room. And he doesn't necessarily have a playbook or he's not able to tell you what's working, what's not working. Why is that? Why is it that some people are just able to do this better than others? And how do managers deal with this? Or how do sales and enablement leaders deal with this?
Yeah. Uh, so one is, like you said, right? And this is probably the most important part of it. And I think this came through in our poll as well, right? Execution consistency is what everybody's looking at. So I think 2, 3 non-negotiables here. One is how much of the role play can you customize, right? Can it be as customized to what the rep is actually going to do, which is the same buyer, same industry, objection, what stage, right? I know a lot of L&D and business leaders sort of, balk away because of the cost element to customization, but
Yeah.
trust me, it is well worth the investment, right? The second is regular feedback, right? And over time, feedback is again like memory, muscle memory, right? It builds pattern recognition, right? So that's something that a lot of people as a manager, you need to keep doing with your teams, not just with the top performers, but with everyone, right? Uh, and what I would say to managers is, practice in simulation, but coach in the deal, right? That is the mantra that I would say. And behavioral change is innate to all of this, right? It has been enforced in the live workflow and needs to be done. Otherwise, after 30 days, after one intervention, the rep will again forget it, right? Uh, the other big thing that I think, which a lot of reps, for example, Miro just says, I read the room, right? But I think a lot of good reps, what they also do is they practice, but they don't practice just for success. They calibrate for failure as well, right? And they simulate environments where, they are failing and then they sort of design their way around it, right? And I think if anybody is to do even a simulation needs to be calibrated for failure. If a rep passes your simulation in the first try, there's something definitely wrong, right? The good simulations are or role plays are ones that are designed to make people struggle, fail, see what happened, and then run it again, right? So I think those are few things I would say.
There was some nuggets there, Aman, that really stuck with me. I think practice and simulation, coach in the deal, is beautiful, and I think you've been doing it, so obviously it's something that you stand by. My next question to you is largely around coaching, right? Obviously, there's no replacement for a manager stepping in and coaching their teams. Having a manager that understands the sales process and can really push the team to do better is invaluable. But what about teams where there's too much volume, or let's look at B2C teams that are dealing with a very high volume of leads, have a lot of feet on street. We see this with BFSI specifically. What is your thoughts or your advice on coaching those teams specifically where the manager can't be present or can't provide that support regularly?
Yeah. So again, I would say the best way to do is start small, identify within that large volume of deals, which are the ones where there is a repeatable pattern coming in. And you'll notice, so you'll notice a pattern appearing across 60%, 40%, 50% of your deals. A lot of people get bogged down by that volume, but if you drill down and look at the specifics, you'll realize that you'll start seeing these patterns, right? Tackle that first problem, then move on to the next one. That's the only way to scale in such large volume scenarios.
That's helpful. And Aman, my last question to you, and this is L&D specific. Obviously, a lot of the intervention runs through the manager. Um, how does L&D then enable teams and managers to do better? Do you have any advice for them on what they could potentially take up immediately in the next couple of weeks to kind of enable their sales teams?
Yeah. So I would say the role of L&D is absolutely changing. And I think the good part is we don't give L&D enough credit for this, but I think a lot of L&D leaders are now getting smarter at reading the business rooms, like I call it, right?
Yeah.
But if you're already not doing it, I think the best thing to do is rather than go to your CRO or sales leader and say, here's the training, is have a conversation saying that what is it that will help move your team's needle in the next 90 days? Just have a conversation, right? And within that conversation, you'll really find the answer, what that business person needs, right? And take it from there. Uh, Again, I think a lot of this is already now happening, which was not happening earlier. And now with AI solutions, I think L&D is also able to roll out very specific customized programs to tackle a particular issue.
Couldn't agree more. I think it has to be tied to business, right? And with that, I mean, I did want to speak about where we've done this 90-day plan or these implemented these 4 steps, right? Obviously, because this is sales, there's revenue involved. I can't disclose the organization itself, but there were 3 use cases that really stood out when I was working on the deck. The first one was a regional financial services organization in South Asia. Their gap was very similar to the first topic that you spoke about, right? Where pipeline review is happening, but forecast accuracy is stuck at 58%. And this was happening across credit card sales, insurance sales, corporate sales, their loan division as well. So it was a problem across the board. They didn't know if it was culture, if it was, the people, if it was org design. So they were really going back and forth on what wasn't working. And we said, hey, let's start with something small. Let's look at how we can really build decision-making skills in your organization. And if that doesn't work, then obviously we can look at larger strategic issues that you might have. So we led with a training program where we taught them about what database decision-making looks like, what are the different ways to use data to leverage data for decision-making, and then actually came up with a program where they started embedding AI-led practice for decision-making into their weekly rhythm. And this was done along with the manager. And by the end of it, we did see substantial increase in their forecast going up, right? Obviously, all of these changes happen about 6 months to a year after the program is done. So the manager's intervention in L&D kind of keeping track becomes very important. The second one is a B2B, a global B2B SaaS company. They had about 400 reps that needed to be trained globally. And their outreach volume was very, very high. ABM was spending millions on lead generation, but pipeline would drop after 2 discussions. Now we said, okay, is this an ICP buyer persona target issue, or is this a problem because your team's not able to engage effectively? Because it is leading to 2 conversations. So what's the challenge? And here we essentially led with a product-led training approach where we said, hey, how do you pitch the product? Who do you pitch which product to within your suite? And we also built very specific simulations that mimicked the sales process that the team goes through. And at every touch point, there were challenges coming in around the product, around how do you manage those objections? How do you not resort to discounts to keep the deal going, right? So that was something that we did. Again, these were smaller interventions. And then the last one, of course, was a global pharma company that we worked with. Again, feet on street reps, need to know the product in and out. And here the challenge was, Aman, that individual contributors that become sales managers don't necessarily have leadership skills, right? Because they know how to run the sales pipeline and do the motions, but how do you manage a team that's doing it? So here we did a very intense 3-month journey, starting from assessment. So our first E in our 4E framework with evaluation, set the bench line, and then moved into enablement. And all of this was AI enabled with products that are contextual. So we're really trying to move away from only using classroom interventions or e-learning interventions for training, specifically for sales, because it's dynamic and you require a certain level of personalization. With that, I'm going to move into how we do this. Now, Aman, we've not necessarily shown the Genie Creator platform publicly. Obviously, when clients come to us, we talk to them about how we build these personalized solutions, but I'm really excited to show the audience as well. And team, this is early days, so do see the platform, tell us what you think. And if you want to know a little bit more about it, we'll obviously get on call with you and also do a deeper dive. Today, due to time, I'll take very little time to just walk you through our AI platform that helps us build these curated solutions, right? All the way from assessments that are contextual to simulations, role plays, and AI coaches as well that can be deployed at scale. And we have a 3-part process when we use this platform, right? The first one is we identify the problem, then we design the different products that go into this learning solution. We deploy these. Deploying these is literally a one-click process at this point, Aman. Before we have developers that were working on deploying this, now I can literally download this as a SCOM file and upload it onto my LMS. So it's that simple. The whole process has literally condensed from 2 months, 3 months to me being able to do this in 2-3 hours, really, right? And the third one, of course, is measure, because we at KNOLSKAPE love data, and nothing that we do with our clients goes out without data. So every product, every training, every intervention, we collect a lot of insights on behaviors, leading indicators about the learners, and that's what we use. Now, with that, I'm going to bring up the product as well. For the product demo specifically, what I'm going to be doing is walking you through the platform and then showing you what the output looks like. So you get a sense of what we do with our clients, how our clients are creating these solutions, and what the end product looks like.
Yeah. And if you can just, again, do a shameless plug, Khyaati, I think this is the best part about my job. When I'm in a room and we are showing this to clients, even though it's not yet fully ready for release, the amount of wows I get in the room is amazing, right? And you'll see the power of AI specifically within a learning performance framework come to life with this.
Absolutely. I'm just going to reshare with my sound. So what you're seeing here in the audience is a platform called Genie Creator. right? And this started for us initially as a platform that we were using to build simulations for ourselves and our clients, very custom, very specific to their context. However, we've now been able to build this in a way where you can actually use this yourself also to build simulations, learning products like evaluations and AI coaches that are specific to your products, your operations, your business reality, right? And we use something called a 4E framework when we look at learning interventions and performance interventions at KNOLSKAPE. You'll notice there's evaluate, but this is where we benchmark. So everything that we do starts with a benchmark. We want to make sure that we have a baseline. There are two different types of assessments here. I won't get into this in too much detail today, but if you want to know a little bit more about how we evaluate using experiential learning, almost like games, do leave a message in the chat, and we'll come back to you. Educate is fairly straightforward, Aman. It's classroom-led training, or we're also now able to make interactive videos for self-paced training that learners can take up. So it's not just you watching a video, but it's almost an avatar speaking to you and asking you questions, you answering in real time, right? But the intent, of course, is learning. The one that I want to spend a little bit more time on is experience, because it also focuses directly on building judgment, which was, in my opinion, the biggest problem that came out from the survey and the chat that we had today. And we have two products here. There's simulations. Now, these are very complex. They put the learner through about 45 to 60 minutes of gameplay. You're getting multiple different problem statements that you have to solve within that time. And we really try and mimic what happens for us modern workers in a day, right? Where you're getting calls, messages, people are texting you on Teams, on Slack, and saying, hey, this is burning, can you fix it? And you really have to think about how that needs to be done right now. So simulation is a little bit deeper in that sense, but an AI role play, in my experience, works really well for sales readiness because it's bite-sized. You're not spending hours sitting through training. You're literally able to train on the spot and get real-time feedback on the spot. So let me walk you through what it looks like on our platform to create a role play, right? Now I can create a new role play. I can obviously save what I've been working on. So I'm going to move to create a role play. You can start from scratch as well in case you have something that's very innovative that hasn't been done before. Or we have templates also that we're constantly adding into our library, right? So I'm going to look at the sales call simulation template right now. Now here, the other thing is, because the platform is powered by AI, you explain the overall goal of the role play. The role play could be handling a tough negotiation, handling a tough discovery call, maybe just understanding which product to pitch, how to handle objections at a certain stage. So you can get really, really specific about the problem that you're trying to solve, right? We also define who the learner is. So what happens for an individual contributor is going to be very different from what you need to train your manager on. What happens with a hunting or a farming team would also be very different. So we really define who the learner is that's going to be going through the experience. And once you've defined this, you can also expand with AI. So we have this very large system of skills taxonomies that are mapped to different functions, mapped to different industries, working in the back end that can help you then really define all of this. Now I move on. I describe my AI persona. Because this is a role play, you're talking to an AI avatar. So here I'm talking to maybe the VP of procurement at a company, or you can actually take one of your live deals that fell through or went through and turn that into a practice session. I think that works really well for a lot of clients that we work with. Instead of a sharing circle, you're actually getting everyone to kind of relive that experience almost. And then you explain the scenario that you want. Now, this is the story, right? Maybe the sales rep receives a lead. They go into the conversation where they have to pitch a product. They've built a rapport. Maybe you want to teach them how to build a rapport. So you really define which part of the sales process you want to mimic during the role play. And you also outline very briefly the skills you want to evaluate, right? Maybe just prospecting. Maybe objection handling, maybe managing a pricing negotiation, right? How do you manage issues with competitors coming in? How do you manage product descriptions as well? So you can really, really get granular. And Aman, this was to your point about how contextualization is so important because how dynamic the process is. I think the platform really allows for that. And that's when I click generate role play. Now, this takes a few minutes, so I'm going to skip to the next stage in this process. Now, if you look at the AI role play specifically, the system then gives you the next step, right? Which is you defining who is the AI character that you're going to be speaking to, what is their first name, their last name, their designation, the company they work at, the description of the company. So we're getting really lifelike in how that learning solution works. And what you'll notice when we go into the solution also is that it's very, very personalized. So Aman and I could be doing the same role play, get obviously very different scores, but also have very different conversations with the AI within that, because we've trained it essentially. You define the persona. This could be someone that is your AI avatar that the learner is speaking to, could be someone that's very stern, could be someone that's very arrogant, could be someone that's very kind. So when you're deploying this across regions, and we do this as well, right, with someone that's working in a certain market, we do want a slightly more aggressive AI persona or a customer coming in. In certain markets, we do make it a little bit more respectful, where they might say, hey, don't be late because I need you to be on time. And someone will say, hey, no, I need this price to be lower. So we really define the personality of the person. And you further define behavioral rules as well, right? You can delete these rules. Now, these are auto-generated based on the requirements you gave us earlier to the system. And you can also edit these, right? So this does take a little bit of practice, but we do have a team that works very closely with you on either building these or training your team on building these. So you're almost certified on using AI to build solutions. And then there are corner case handling. So what are the edge cases that you want to essentially look at? Because learners can see all sorts of outlandish things during training. What are the fallback responses? How do you test the quality within the system as well? And there are obviously different AI avatars. Now, this is our initial library. We're adding more to this as we go. So you can pick one of these should you choose to use the platform. If there's something that you don't like, or there's another avatar that you want added, that can also be done. And we've got multiple different accents and voices as well, right? And then I can save this. Once I save this, I can also publish it, right? There's also skills. So you also define the kind of skills that you're testing. You add weights to them. So let's say discovery as a skill, or conversation at the beginning of the sales process as a skill, is very important to you. So you can actually increase the weight there, make it 60% maybe, right? And then de-escalation is a skill. So you really define these as well. The learner also gets a score on these at the end of the role play. So it is really dynamic, and you can save this and then publish it. Now I'm going to move to the published version of this as well, so you can see what I'm talking about. So once you publish the role play, you've done this work. This takes about 2 to 3 hours to do in one sitting, right? This is the page that you're taken to. So the learner gets an overview of the client that they're speaking to, the bank, or the customer that they're speaking to, the client, the company that they're speaking to, and what the goal is. We also highlight what the critical challenge would be. We tell them upfront what are the skills being assessed. Remember, you define these, you're given these weights. What the learner doesn't know is what the weights are for these, right? They know what the skills are, and we give you guidelines as well. And now I'm just going to go full screen and start the conversation, so you get a look in the feel of the UI UX, and then I'll very quickly move to the report. So this is just the UI UX. There's a transcript. You can end the session, you can exit it. And this is in the form of a Teams call. So we try and make sure that we're mimicking what it happens for us when we get on sales calls online.
Good morning. Thanks for meeting with me. I'm Deepusha, CTO at Technova Solutions. A colleague mentioned Meridian Ascend. What exactly can you offer that justifies consolidating everything with Meridian?
Now, for your response, you can type out your response. You can also speak into the microphone to make it as lifelike as possible. I'm going to be doing that now in the interest of time, and I'll just do one response and we'll move on. Hi, Deepu. Thank you for meeting with me. I'm very excited to be walking you through our services. I think for someone like yourself, Meridian is a good one-stop solution because we are able to provide savings, current accounts, and also advice on investment and wealth management, which I think is what you're looking for. Now I can replay the recording, I can edit it as well, I can redo the recording. And then once I send it, that's when the system essentially analyzes this and I get a response.
I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I need more specific details. Can you explain how Meridian's offerings, particularly in wealth management, differ from my current banks? I'm looking for concrete evidence of superior value, especially regarding fees and investment performance.
So you'll notice his response was based on what I said. And this is how we're making learning contextual for the learner through role plays and through AI. And once the learner has gone through 15 minutes of this, right, they get a very detailed report. We're also able to provide group reporting and dashboard to you, should you want to see what the cohort looks like or your whole department looks like. But at an individual level, we give them a score on their overall performance. And all of this is dynamic, right? You define what goes into the report, you define how you want to give feedback. And Aman, to your point about coaching, I think this is a really good way for learners and managers themselves to also see what's working, what's not working. If you're not able to do it live in deal, maybe throughout the deal, is there a way for us to deploy something like this? There's a detailed skill analysis where we tell you what worked, what didn't. So there's recommendations coming in as well, which was also Yuna's problem, right? How do I tell people what works, what doesn't, and how do they kind of take it forward from there? So the report is quite detailed. And it's, again, dynamic, so it's personalized to you. Everyone gets the same UI UX for the report, but the content in it is very specific to what you've done. Now, with that, I'll pause here very quickly. I know that we have 3 minutes left. So let's move into what the next 90 days could look like for you, whether you use the platform or not. Aman, we follow a 3-step process, right? The first one is to focus and diagnose. So you said, hey, don't look at the whole problem, ask your CRO or CBO what's working, what's not working, and really pick on that. The next one is to actually train the team, then build a solution that works, practice. Please try and use AI L&D. I can't stress enough how much it's changed the way we coach and we train, because we're able to now build one solution and make sure that it's personalized and scalable. And the last one, of course, is measure. Now, over and above this, Aman, any closing thoughts for our audience on the chat in terms of how AI can help L&D and what sales readiness, what their first step towards sales readiness could look like in the next 90 days?
Yeah, I would say you've already covered that, but I just want to repeat it that you need to have a baseline in place, because if you can't prove movement without a starting point. So make sure you know what you're measuring. The other most important thing is you need to have a commercial sponsor for this, right? And not L&D to own this. You need somebody who really has revenue numbers on the line. Otherwise, trust me, the minute a quarter does not go according to plan, it will all get deprioritized, right? So make sure that's built into the system. And like I said, it has to be now contextual for, AI helps us do that. You can't run generic sales programs that, call everybody to the room, sales marketing teams, because everybody's dealing with different problems. You need to have AI powered solutions that learn on the fly and contextualize it to every learner, right? And I think that's the biggest shift that AI is helping with.
Thank you for that, Aman. I think the point about a sponsor from the business team is very important, just so that the program doesn't get deprioritized. And Yuna actually did all of this, right? We work with people like Yuna day in and day out. And I think what changed for Yuna was not deploying more solutions or more products, but it was trying to build a team that's AI ready and or sales ready rather. And AI is an enabler. So again, pick one thing that you want to work on in the next 30 days. Try and make sure that you have a business sponsor on board and go from there. With that, we've come to the end of our webinar. Thank you everyone for joining in. I know a few of you trickled in a little late, but we had a lot of fun presenting this to you. And we are going to, in this week, send you a diagnostic report where you can essentially take this quiz. It's like a simulation or a role play rather. So you go through the product as well, get a look and feel of it, but it gives you a report in terms of where your L&D function is and what your sales teams are lacking based on what you've said. Do bring that report to us, send it to us. We'd love to discuss it with you, tell you what works, what doesn't. And for those of you that are interested in understanding a little bit more about AI-powered learning solutions, do set up a working session with us as well. It's not a sales call, but it's to help you really identify where the readiness gap is. So book that with us. But with the session ending, there is a poll coming up as well. So do tell us what you liked, what you didn't, and what kind of topics you'd like to see the next time that you come into our session. We do have a couple questions, Aman, in the chat.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll have time. We are already on the hour mark. I do see a lot of excitement, Khyaati, around people saying, how can we trial the platform? So
Absolutely.
to see that excitement.
Absolutely. So, Kalyan, you've asked us for the trial of the platform. We would recommend that you speak with us once. We try and understand what works, what doesn't, because there are, multiple products that you can build on the same platform. And then once you've kind of understood what works, what your requirement is, how we convert that into something to an AI-powered solution on the platform, we can take it to your revenue team as well. But let's set up a call. Let's talk to you about what your challenges are with your sales team, and we can then trial the platform. Sushant, same advice to you. You can do a trial of the platform. You can do a trial of the AI role plays as well in isolation, because our team could build the product for you, or you could build it yourself using the platform. So we have both models available. So do reach out to us. Obviously, our team will also be sending you a little bit more detail on how this can be done. But let's talk. Let's understand what your requirement is, since the platform is dynamic, and then we can take it from there. All right, I will very quickly stop sharing my screen. Thank you, everyone. Kalyan. All right. So, Kalyan, everyone's doing role plays now, right? You'll notice that we're not the only ones doing it. And honestly, the USP on our platform is not the role play in isolation, right? That's one component of it. If you looked at Genie Creator specifically, we are able to create evaluations that are real-time, that are contextual. We are creating simulations that are also contextual, that are real-time. And then you've got role plays as one product. There's also AI coaches that come along with the role play. So essentially, how the platform works is you build a experiential evaluation. That data then leads to education, then that leads to an experience, which is where practice happens outside of work, leading to insights that you can use at work. And the AI coach can actually be deployed in real time in the flow of work, right? So think of Genie Creator almost as a platform that doesn't give you just one product, but really helps you orchestrate an end-to-end learning journey that's AI-driven and contextual for your audience. If you're looking for just one role play, we could do that as well. But it's largely about really helping you build a data-driven L&D function, and that's where the platform comes in. The other functionality that the platform allows is for the team to use data, one at a learner level and second at an org level as well. So for a lot of organizations, we actually use the data that we've collected from our role plays, from our simulations, the AI coaches, to give them a view of where their learners are stuck, where the teams are stuck, and where the intervention needs to work. And a lot of manager coaching that happens on the job outside of the platform happens using these dashboards, right? So that's my suggestion to you would be to look at Genie Creator almost as an end-to-end platform, as opposed to just a product that builds a role play.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo that thought, Khyaati. You can definitely do these, one intervention kind of modules using Genie Creator, but the real power is using it across the all four E's.
Absolutely. Now, Altaf, you also had a question for us in the chat about front-end teams such as technicians. Technicians could be software technicians, hardware technicians. Currently, the platform doesn't work for hardware specifically, because it's very difficult for us to recreate, what the inside of a plane or a machine or even just basic machinery or would look like. So I would recommend different simulation platforms for that. With technology specifically, with coding, we don't necessarily get into that. In our experience, using simulations is not necessarily the best tool when we're looking at cybersecurity, front-end, back-end development. That's where we use something called clinics, tech clinics, where we bring in instructors. We do a lot of cases. We do something called break it labs, where you come with the code that you've written or the product that you've built, and we kind of break it apart and see what works, what doesn't. So something high touch might work better there. With tech specifically, building judgment around where to deploy the tech, where to use it, what not to do, how many resources to allocate, agile methodologies, Scrum, for example, all of that our platform can be used. So the soft aspects of tech, yes, by all means, the platform works. Anything that's harder, we do recommend a high touch intervention. And of course, we have the capabilities to do that as well. So I'm happy to connect with you on that.
Great. I know we are beyond our allocated time, Khyaati, but this was a wonderful webinar. I do hope the audience got a lot of insights from this. We'll definitely be sending a post-webinar survey link as well. But once again, thank you to everybody who joined in and participated in the chat and through the Q&A. Really, really appreciate it. And we look forward to coming back soon with another Edge webinar on a different topic.
Absolutely. Thank you everyone for joining in. It was a pleasure hosting for you, and we'll see you all very soon.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.